What's up, everybody? Andrew Sharp here, Rich Criminal. Anytime I start a new project or I'm working on a new song, whether it's I play piano and guitar in real life or whether I'm doing it on Logic Pro, I always want to do uh, the first thing that I want to do is build a chord progression, a melody, and a bass line. So, in order to build a basic chord progression, I always go to Google and I'll type in chord progression and then I'll specify what key I want it to be in. So here I've typed in chord progression G major because I want to match the key of my project, which is in G major. When you search that, you're going to get a bunch of stuff, and I don't really read this stuff. I can read, and I do know theory, but I like to spend my time creating music and not like trying to, become a scholar in musicology and things like that. So I just go to images because it's easy for me. I'm very a visual learner. And what I like to look for is notes or a picture of notes on top of piano keys. So here you go. Right here you can see there's a picture of the piano chords and the notes of each chord in the key of G major. So what I do is I just copy and paste it, I'll save it, and then I'll throw it onto my desktop and I put it next to my track so I can work with it in a quick reference. So now that I have that up, and you can do this for any key that you want to work in, what I'll do now is I'll build my chord progression. So within the chord progression, what I do is the first thing, my first chord I always pick is the root note of that key. So here you got the key of G major. I'm going to pick the G major chord because that is the root. And then all I do is visually, I look at this and I'm like, oh, three black keys, two black keys, G is in between. Bam, I draw it in. So there's my G, I draw on a B, and I draw on a D. So now I have the first um, three notes of the G major chord within the key of G major. Then what I like to do, and I think is really cool, is instead of following any specific pattern, I just randomly pick stuff. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it allows me to be spontaneous and create things that maybe people haven't created before or that isn't normal or mainstream. So here for the second chord, I picked E minor. And once again, I just plug and play. So here you can see where E's at. I go to my piano roll, bust a E, there's a G, and there's a B. For the third chord, I've picked B minor, and I'm just going to do the same thing. So there's the B, there's the D, and then there's the F sharp right there. So the cool thing about this chord chart or a chord chart like this is not only does it give you the chords you can play in the key of G major, but it gives you the notes that you can play within the key of G major to create your melody. So once I have gotten my chord progression done, amazing, sounds beautiful. All I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and then paste my chord progression to my melody track. And then from here, I can either play it on my keyboard or I like really cutting and chopping in this piano roll because it it creates things that I might not be able to play, with my fingers or things that I haven't thought of, and then I can easily manipulate it. So, like I said over here, this will actually show you all the notes that you can play within the key of G major that will sound good with our chord progression. So here you can see it's A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. That F sharp is what makes this key of G major stick out from, let's say, just the regular C major scale, which is all A, B, C, D, E, F, G, no flats, no sharps. Sorry, I just threw in theory there. I apologize. I will haze myself later. So then what I do, like I said, is to create my melody. I really like just to get creative. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bump this up an octave or two to create separation from my chords so I can start working on my melody. So here you can see we're in the C3 region. I'm just going to bump it up above that region, and it's going to be something like that. So now you can see here's my melody I'm working on, and then if I go back to my chord progression that I just built, it's lower, it's higher, it's magic. And then from here, I just chop. Like I said, I like to chop, I like to be random, I like to throw in notes. Now, the only thing you have to be cognizant about when you're doing this is that you can put notes anywhere, any length, any velocity. You can mess with all this stuff. But I always do single notes in my melody to start out with. Maybe later I'll put in a double or triplicate or something like that. But as long as you put all these notes or draw notes that fit within this scale. So you can see I just drew a note there, but look at it's a sharp or a flat. So you just move it up till it's on the whole note to fit in here. Now, if ever I play a note on F, I have to remember that in the G scale, the F is a sharp because it tells me right here. All right. So I just go through there. I randomly put in some notes. I do things like that. And then what ends up happening is you end up getting something kind of like this. And now that becomes my melody. All right. And all I did is for the sake of time, I just went through and I chopped it up and I put it there. Now for my bass line. This is the easiest part. All you're going to do once again is you're going to copy that. You're going to paste it. These are my chord progressions. And then all I do is I just grab the bottom notes of my chord progression. And once again, I create space or distance by dropping it down an octave. All right, so you can see here, I'm going to just drop it down an octave. And then what I do is I get rid of these notes up here. So now what I've done is I've created a basic chord progression in the key of G major utilizing G, E minor, and B minor. I then raised it up an octave and just put single notes within these chords. So all I did was I put them in, like, see how the individual notes are labeled? That's all I did here. I just put in some notes. And then for my bass line, I just took that chord, the lowest note, and I dropped it down an octave. So I have no clue what this is going to sound like, but let's see, because I just made this. So that bass sounds a little bit wonky. So what I've done is I actually went through and just tweaked it for about a minute, and I did a little bit of editing. I chopped up my chords so it just wasn't, hitting once. I did it. I had it hit twice, and it kind of sounds like this. Sounds cool. So then now I have my foundation of my song. And you know what? This melody can change, the bass line can change. You know what? I might even change some of these chords, but I can always refer back to my chart to know which chords are going to sound good. Then I decided, like, hey, what type of song am I going to play? And I like doing EDM. So what I'll do is I'll actually just copy these and I'll paste them into different instruments within Logic Pro. And what ends up happening is once you do that, now these are just straight up randomly picked instruments that I did. And I haven't manipulated any of the mixing or controls. But all I did is I took those three tracks that I built, the chord, the melody, and the bass line from the piano, and I added some synthesizers, a bass, and things like that. So it ends up coming out sounding like this. And that's it. That's how I build my chord progression, my melody, and my bass line to give me that foundation for my project or for the next song that I'm going to build. Hey, thanks for listening.